Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of the Globally Connected podcast. I'm your host, Jerome.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gigi.
Yes, thank you guys for checking in for another episode with us. We hope you guys are doing all right. So, today we're going to be talking about the challenges of doing business internationally. And that can mean a myriad of things, it's very complex. So we're going to just be talking about our experiences that we have and just providing some, perspective on that and just how you can navigate that and what to be aware of. So,
We can maybe start with like what it's like from an American perspective, the work culture in America, and what we've seen there. And then we'll go ahead and talk more on a global scale too. When you go around and understand like the different concepts there. So, Jerome, from your experience and from what you've gathered in living in America, how would you say the culture is over there when it comes to work?
hmm, very fast paced, very quick. Depending on the setting. Like for example, so in America, as majority of you all know, or for those who don't know, it could be three different type of settings. You have corporate, you have nonprofit, and you have politics. We're not going to talk about politics. This is not a political conversation today, but I'm just providing a lay of the land. So I say all that to say it just depends on the setting, but typically corporate, it's more like fast, straight to the point. You know what I'm saying? Let's get the deal done. To whereas
Mhm.
nonprofit, it's more like subtle, relaxed, personable. So to provide perspective to your question, I would just say um it's not as just in general, even with nonprofit, I just don't think it's not as personable, and the objective is to not build a community. We'll get to that point later, as what I've been accustomed to seeing from doing business internationally. A lot of times people come in and just say, "Good morning, hey, how are you doing?" But they don't actually take that conversation to the next point. It's like surface level. So
Yeah.
whereas
How
we're
are
not
you?
gonna
But
get into
please
that.
just say good.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get into that aspect. That's more of what I've experienced internationally. But yeah, that's what I've experienced so far. To answer your
Mhm.
question. How
Yeah.
about you? I'm curious to know. You obviously from another country, but you did grow up in America. But was it a challenge for you, or did you pick up on anything um, with doing business, or just being around business settings in America, but not as an American, even though you grew up in America? Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So agreed to you. I think like life working in America is like very fast paced, which I actually really appreciate. I think like the productivity is quite high in a way because things are so fast paced. So I really do enjoy the process involved with the work in America and how things like run their course and their strong project management and like um and requirements to fulfill that like the team's on board with and things are moving. So I'd say it's quite fast paced, especially if you're in an area like Silicon Valley, like a tech valley like that.
Yeah,
In places like that, it can be so fast paced that it causes burnout.
yeah,
So I think that's also important to note is like finding that balance. And I've seen a lot more tech companies like over the years since COVID start to implement like longer vacation time or unlimited vacation time, or merging it with remote work. So I think these are good things to help with the burnout that we do see so often in America. I think another thing though that I picked up on work in America, which I think is quite interesting and unique to America, is it has a very individualistic aspect in the sense that everyone is kind of focused on their personal success and development in the job. Like, how does this benefit them? What are they doing in the role? It's not so, I would say, community based or not so company based. Of course, every company has their own company culture. So noted that some strive for that more and implement like more community based things, which is great.
hmm
Um, but I do think like at large, you're kind of like there with yourself, trying to move ahead with yourself. So you want to get the promotion, you want to get to the next step and things like that. Another thing on the flip hand, which is a bit contradictory to what I just said in terms of the individualistic culture, I do think in America the HR team takes much more of a role to facilitate engagement among the team, whether that is to set up like lunches monthly or like a company outing monthly, going to go do a volunteer service all together, things like that, or giving people benefits, whether it's like through their wellness program. So I think it's interesting that there is a team there set to help build these foundations and give you the support you need as an employee. Like the benefits are quite good in the US as an employee. Obviously, the pay for America is quite higher than most other countries in the world. So, you know, fast pace, more individual, like work hard, play hard kind of vibe in the US.
Question. When you hear challenges of doing business internationally, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
For the US?
For you in general, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear challenges of doing business internationally?
I think it's changed over the years. So when I first started getting into doing business internationally, probably the most challenging thing was time zones. And obviously, I still struggle with time zones, but I'm more of a night owl, so it helps a lot. Like with me being in Asia to work with other time zones because I'm ahead of the time of everybody else. Like in Asia, we're like the farthest out in the time zone. So typically nighttime will be like US morning time. And as like an international business person, if I have a meeting with a US person, I like have will never ask them to meet me late at night because it just is kind of weird for a lot of American people, like 9 to 5 and then they shut their computer, you know? So I always try to work with that time zone of like the morning there, which to me would then be night. So for me, that's have been a bit of a challenge, but it's okay. I would say though another challenge I picked up on is really just communication. Like communication is a huge thing, and I think it's the basis of human connection is like through communicating with each other.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot that goes into communicating with another person. Like you have to understand their background, what they view as something that is proper versus improper, what is socially acceptable there versus not. So I'd say communication's a big thing. How about you? Like, what challenges have you seen when doing business internationally?
I've seen language barriers. That's the number one. Language barriers, time zone, obviously. What else? Just the way people do business, how people like approach business meetings. So I would say the biggest thing that I personally take away as a challenge is just the business practices and people's cultures when it comes to doing business. Everybody don't conduct business the same way. And what I mean by that is, for example, for our partners in Senegal, they like to meet over food, actually get to know one another, be personable. I mean, they show up later, whatever the case may be, but that's just a practice of doing business. To whereas in America, my experience has been, and I'm sure yours has been the same. You show up, you give a small greeting, have surface level a small talk conversation, and then you go right into the business trying to get a deal done. But
Mhm.
what I've seen in doing business just in at least 6 different countries now, the objective is not to always get a deal done. It's just let's make some type of progression to eventually get a deal done. So that's what I've seen so far.
Yeah, like I would say like in my experience when I work, for example, with like Latin American cultures or African cultures, the
Hmm.
similarity that I see in those two cultures is like we spend a lot of time getting to know each other before we talk business. Like maybe even 30 minutes on a call just doing intros, understanding the person's life, understanding their background with the company, things like that before a deal is even on the table to talk about that. So people want to build a sense of trust with you
Yeah.
in cultures that are actually more collective. Like if a country has more of a vibe of like appreciating family and connections and it's not so individualistic of a culture, they want to know who their quote unquote getting in bed with to do business. So I want to take the time to make sure that you're trustworthy. Um, yeah, and like when we were in Africa too, and in Latin America too, this is quite common. Another similarity I noticed between the two is like the concept of time. And like me, I'm Algerian, so like that's just time is time, you know? It's more about the vibe, you know? So sometimes like you get in you go to a meeting and you're just sitting there and waiting for everybody to arrive. And even when they arrive, they don't come and sit right away. They go grab some food, they go chill and things like that and then get started. So the concept of time is more fluid. And actually people in cultures like that might feel a bit weird if they're too pressed on time. Like it feels like maybe a bit unnatural. But of course, in the business setting, I think it's more better. Like people will show up on time. Or maybe like there's always like a 5 to 10 minute window when meetings start when I have them with Africans or Latin Americans. And typically like they'll come in like 10 minutes in or 8 minutes in or something. But again, it always depends on the person, the culture of the place, and also the environment that you're in. Like if it's a serious meeting, I'm sure everybody will come and get there on time. If it's something more like brainstorming, maybe people will walk in and out type of thing. So there's a big trust too within society, within each other, that this is kind of the norm. But that can be challenging, like coming from America and then all of a sudden you're waiting for people to arrive and you might consider that it's rude, but maybe from their perspective it's not rude. It's more just like, oh, I got held up doing this or I got held up doing that, and there's more like understanding from their perspective. So these like things, it's good to align on them and understand like a person's like where they're coming from, how it operates in their country. And then of course if they come to America to do a meeting there, they also can learn up on that and be more punctual. Of course with like European culture, if we jump there, they are, I would say like Europe is more about work-life balance than America. Like even in France, for example, they don't have 40-hour weeks, they have 35-hour weeks. They get so much vacation time paid. They get sick leaves and things like that. Quality of life is more important. Like for them, work is work, and then life is actually what's more important, like going to cafes or hanging out or being with their family. So I think that's quite interesting in Europe. And then also like the directness of the culture is different. Like German culture is very, very direct from what I've seen. Like there's no real like chit chatting or things like that. It's like getting straight to the facts of the business and asking the right questions and things like that. Jerome, have you seen like what it's like to work in a European culture?
I don't think I've had that exposure yet. But I want to actually kind of pivot back towards something that you was talking about that I wanted to kind of like, be devil's advocate. Do you think it's a pro, or do you think it's good to kind of like be personal with somebody in business if you don't know them? Like, what's the cons of doing
Hmm.
that? That's the first question that I have.
That's a good question. For me personally, I would say yes, because I think the way that people are in their life is going to be how they are in business too. So I'd like to get a sense of a person's like kind of vibe before I do business with them. So, for example, this is an example that I actually watched a video on this and I thought it was quite interesting. But this guy said, he would never get in business with someone who cheats on his wife, for example. Because
Hmm,
if you cheat on your wife and you cheat on your family, what's to make me think you're not going to cheat on me as a business partner and like
absolutely.
betray me? So that time to like get to know a person, get to know like their habits and stuff. Like sometimes people do it really subtly and you don't even realize they're trying to understand like your characteristics. Like even things like, oh, like what's your morning routine? Like do you drink coffee? What do you like to do in your leisure time? Like maybe they want to understand if you're a party animal, if you're more of a chill person, to understand like how you operate, how to communicate with you too. So for me, I would say I think yes. How about you?
I actually was thinking about it when I was listening to you talk. First, that's a great perspective, but I kind of think is it like levels to it though? Like, should you start off
Mhm.
automatically doing that? Because it's kind of like mixing business with pleasure. Should I start off mixing with business with pleasure, or should I wait till like the second or third time I meet you to then mix business with pleasure and be and the pleasure part, obviously, for the audience is being personable. So I'm kind of like 50-50 to be honest. Because like I don't
Mhm.
know you, I am getting to know you, but I shouldn't be as vulnerable and open with you off the top like that. But it also
Yeah,
depends too on the person's vibe and the energy, because you could pick up on that as well. So that's my
exactly.
perspective.
Yeah. Like for example, me here in I'm currently in Asia, specifically in Thailand. Like the
Hmm.
work culture here is entirely different than the US. Like entirely different. And I will say, I don't think there's much room to get to know people at all. Like you just go straight into business. And I think that's in a way it's good too because we come for work and then work is the topic of convo and we're all there from a perspective like to share knowledge, but somebody whoever hired the people did vet them out in some way to understand more about their background and if they're a fit there. So maybe if you're in an environment where there's already people doing a specific task or something, I think it's okay, but if it's an environment maybe where you're meeting like a client for the first time, I want to know at least a little bit about you or your business. Like I want to know at least a little like have you had some like it's crazy the things you learn when you ask questions. Like I
Yeah.
remember once I asked like have you guys had like any problems with data? And then boom, like all of a sudden you get like the data breaches, you get like all this stuff that people want to keep under the rug. So sometimes it's good to inquire to learn more. But I agree with you. Sometimes too, it's good to stick like in business and just get straight to it. Um, I guess it really depends on the nature of the relationship and if there needs to be a lot of trust there or not. Like, what is on the table there? Um, and do you think these people are trustworthy to do so?
Yeah. See, that's why I think that's my street smarts coming in. That's why I
Yeah.
think street smarts in business or just any type of can't even have to be street smarts, just practical smarts. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Like practicalities in business because business is very cutthroat, and a lot of people could take being personable for kindness, but it's actually a weakness that they taking advantage of. So it's kind of like leverage. So you always
Yeah.
got to go to anything like getting out more leverage than you actually put in. So to that perspective, that's how I look at it, man. And it ain't even
Yeah.
about money. It's like how can I leverage this business negotiation, this business relationship, this business meeting, etc., to achieve the ultimate goal that I'm aspiring to achieve. So that's
And you
how I
know what?
feel.
That in itself says a lot about a person's character. Like if they're coming into the meeting ready to achieve a goal, then that says that they're serious too, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I like to have fun and I do genuinely like to get to know people because I'm a genuine guy, but I am serious at the same time too.
Yeah, I feel that.
How would you? This is tr- pivoting. How would you describe yourself actually as a? This is different. We'll get back on topic. But how would you describe yourself in business in 3 words? How would you describe yourself?
In 3 words.
Honestly, yeah. How
I
would
would
you describe
say
yourself in three adjectives?
inquisitive. Um, I'd say caring in a way. And hmm, inquisitive, caring, and I guess problem solving or more discovery. I don't know. I really like to ask questions a lot in the beginning because I think like the more you try to understand without assumptions, the better to actually get like the full picture. I'm actually trying to work on being maybe a bit less of a social person because I like to understand how a person is, like what's going on, get to know them a bit. But sometimes, it's not necessary. So I really like to pick up on the vibe within the first 10 seconds of the call to understand how the other person is, and in a way kind of match and mirror the vibe there. Like if they're more comfortable being more cutthroat, then I can be more cutthroat too. But if they are more comfortable with feeling more like we're getting to know each other and that's an important part of doing business with them, then I'm open to that too. So kind of adapt based on the call.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you? What would you say for yourself?
Passionate. Um,
That's key.
what's the word? Passionate, practical, and genuine.
Yeah.
That's how I am in business. That's interesting. Those are all interesting. So, all right, that's like I said, that's interesting. I just wanted to talk about that. But we could pivot
Yeah.
more into other challenges. Of doing business internationally. So let's pivot to language. I'll start with
Mhm.
that's been the biggest challenge for me. Because I fluently only speak one language, which is English, but I am beginner in Spanish and French. So I would take it to Senegal, where the number one or the official language is French, right? That's the official language, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Wolof in French. Yeah.
So that's the official language. I knew that going into it. I didn't know really much about French except bonjour and oui. Bonjour is hello, oui is yes. See, guys, I'm
Yeah.
a beginner, but nah.
Yeah.
So I remember we was on a plane, and you could tell because we were sitting next to each other. I remember you told me something. I think it was bonjour at bienvenue. She's like, that's all you need to know. As soon as I got off the
What?
plane, I'm
Bonjour and what?
at bienvenue, like basically hello and welcome.
Ah, bienvenue. Yeah.
But as soon as we got off the plane, that all went out the window. So I just remember we was checking into the hotel, and then our guy, one of our partners, he was like, I don't see how you can make it. You need to learn French. Because that's all we speak. And primarily that was basically the case. So at least about 95 or 90% of the time, I was in environments and settings where the language that was spoken was French. So it's like this is very interesting because I'm not saying they're saying anything negative or trying to do something to me. But you got to understand in a setting like that, you are automatically prone to think like that. So
Hmm.
that was the challenge for me. Like I found it interesting and very curious because I'm trying to understand what people are saying. And I was picking up on what some of them was saying because you even pointed that out, you and Abdul. But it got worse, or the worst experience we had with that was when we had a meeting with a potential possible client, and started off speaking English, and then also in Senegal they do have a ritual where they, like I said, they like to eat a snack or food when doing business or just talking. That's just a thing. So that's another practice that I was talking about earlier. But the bulk of the conversation, Abdul, Gigi, and the guy was speaking French, and I was sitting there, I'm not understanding what's going on, and like I kind of got upset, but it wasn't upset at them. It was more so upset. It was, well, part of it was them because I didn't feel included, if I'm being honest, and that made me feel some type of way. But it was more so like I don't feel a part. I have to learn this language, and that's like a barrier that is out of my control, but it's something that I can't control. So I say all that to say that was like that's the biggest thing, audience, for you guys to be aware of, or just have some type of translator that could conversate that back to you because they could have done that, but it was just so much in the heat of the moment, and I don't think they knew that I
It
was
was
feeling like that.
days. Yeah.
That
I
they kept.
remember at first I was like translating, but then the convo kept moving so fast and like I was responding back to him. So it was hard to kind of juggle between translating, listening, all that. So yeah, I remember after that we felt really bad too because we're like, damn, yeah, that whole convo just switched to French because also the client like doesn't speak great English, so he was more comfortable in French. But it's definitely something to note. Like even I think what I've been using more now living here in Thailand is like there's really good tools we can use, like transcribing on Google Translate, where you
Hmm.
just press on your phone and as people are talking, it'll translate it to English so you can like stay up to date. Things like that help, but that's totally true. Like sometimes, you don't know. Your subconscious can automatically go, "Oh my god, are they talking about me? Oh, like what if something?" But because I felt that too here in Thailand, but at the same time, it's like it's okay because the combo just flows so fast, and I would just find myself kind of just sitting quiet, listening, understanding, maybe doing something else in the meantime. And then if someone want to switch back to English, like I will, but I actually wouldn't transcribe in the Thai settings I was in because it was more so like casual talk that they were doing, like between the team, like just talking about life. So I felt like it'd be kind of weird if I'm like transcribe, like what are y'all saying? But I think it's a good tool for in business meetings. And actually, I found out recently because I've been having some meetings with people in Brazil and I don't speak Portuguese at all.
Mm,
And I can like kind of understand because it sounds like French and Spanish a little bit, but I
yeah.
cannot speak it. So what we had to do, because they couldn't they spoke English, yes, but like when we get to the deep technicalities, obviously everyone's more comfortable expressing in their own native language. So Google Meet actually has a tool where you can transcribe the audio live while someone is talking. You can turn
Really?
on captions. Yes, you can turn on captions and change it from the person's language to your language. So in this case, they would speak in Portuguese and I had the captions to show up in English for me. And them on the flip, they changed it to where their captions would appear in English or in Portuguese.
Wow.
And we literally that's literally how we did the whole like and this was like an ongoing partner. So I had weekly meetings with them, and this is how we would communicate. And we created like a Notion board in Portuguese, and I would translate it to English on Google Translate for me to understand what they're putting, and I would put my notes in English. So we found a way to make it work, but language can definitely be a barrier. And it can be challenging and scary for sure. Like I think it's one of those things that anyone can feel very challenged and almost a bit fearful too if you're in a situation where you don't know how to communicate. Like I remember um just feeling really nervous when I first came to Thailand and like people were speaking in Thai and all I knew was like hi and bye. um
Mm,
hi and like how are you? Like I was even nervous to speak the little Thai that I know because I'm like, oh, my accent is off, I don't know. But I remember like the first time being in that setting, I felt very like nervous and like shy and like I don't know, just million thoughts in my mind at once. But
hmm.
then over time, I kind of just started to do my own thing and embrace it. Like I'm like, oh, okay, this is nice. Like I'm glad that they can speak in Thai with each other and then engage. And then if anyone needs me in English, like I'm here, kind of vibe in that sense because it was more like just chit chatting type of environment. But in meetings, like that Google Meets transcribe tool is a lifesaver.
Wow. That's okay. I learned something new today. That's interesting. By the way, I didn't know you had those experiences when you first got to Thailand. So I would say, what would you suggest? How can we suggest people overcome a challenge such as language and business practices when doing business internationally? For those who are interested in doing it.
Yeah, I would say it's challenging, it's okay to be afraid, and I think like figuring out a comfortable zone for the both parties
Hmm.
is very key. Like I remember when I first started speaking with the team out in Brazil, like they were speaking in English the whole time and you know, and the next meeting they told me, "Hey, like is it actually okay with you if we speak in Portuguese cuz we'll feel more comfortable that way?" And I really
Yeah.
appreciated that openness. So, I would say like be open about what it is you feel cuz sometimes too another thing I noticed like someone can say for example that they're comfortable in something or like they get into a meeting and then they realize like okay because I've gotten in meetings in Spanish and then like the different accents I'm like okay hey is it okay if you slow down a little bit when you're speaking So you can feel a bit intimidated to ask these things like, hey, could you slow down, or hey, could you type this? But I think it's completely okay, and people actually really appreciate that. And even being able to like sit there and do a call with someone in English when you speak Portuguese is such a huge, amazing thing. Like, that's really amazing and very like respectable. So it's nothing to be nervous about or feel like insecure about, because it's actually such a strength that you're even open to speaking in another language to someone, or to working with someone in a different culture, because a lot of people just stay in their closed bubbles. And so like opening yourself up to that is really good. And if you can learn a couple of things in the language of the person that you're speaking to, of course, that's always appreciated. Um, and the universal language is energy. So I think, if you're able to establish a connection with somebody and establish a shared mission and goal, like, you can find a way to make these things work using tech tools or language or things like that.
Yeah, no, that's all good. I definitely would suggest openness as well. You suggested some great practices. And also I would just say just being comfortable with being open. Which is the
Mm-hmm.
same thing as openness, but you have to be open-minded. Don't go in there, you know, thinking negative and having doubts. I think that's the best way to overcome dealing with any challenge internationally. Like, I'm an open-minded person, you're an open-minded person. Whether we have doubts or whatever the case may be, your fears, we immediately like let that go as soon as we get off the plane or enter a new environment. So I would just say just having confidence. It's just being confident, having being open-minded and just knowing that I'm all right. Whether I'm in this alone or around people who can help me in this, I'm all right, you know?
Yeah. So, every culture in this world is like so, so unique, and there's never like a one size fits all type of thing. Like, everyone is really different. So, I would say really, really like research before you go and do business with someone of a different culture, and try to learn from people there that are of the culture and understand some like do's and don'ts. Like, for example, when I came into Thailand, like, I quickly realized the the culture here is like very like people don't complain at all at work, and it's a very like you do things with a smile type of thing. Like,
Mm,
it's people here like really avoid confrontation like very highly in I don't know about obviously like all Asian cultures, but no, not all Asian cultures. It's definitely different from place to place, but here in Thailand, for example, like confrontation is like not a thing, because you want to keep face, is what's said here. So everyone kind of would rather like conform and like be as one whole
yeah,
energy, and like what everyone's like understanding each other and working together. But if someone is like very like confronting or reacting to something or asking for a change for something, it's kind of like it's better to just flow with the rest of the narrative. So I think that was something quite interesting that I learned like when I got here. I'm like, okay, like, I see everyone is like very friendly and like will say yes, even if they want to say no, they'll say yes.
yeah.
So yeah.
So I have a question then. Since you said they don't deal with handle conflict or experience that in business, if a disagreement happens, if you experienced that, how do they handle disagreements then?
Yeah, I think they handle disagreements by like talking it out and kind of like finding a place. So if there is a disagreement, hopefully someone will speak up to even say that there's a disagreement. So like pretty much what I'm saying is what I've noticed is it's quite rare for someone to be like confrontational about something and be like, "Hey,
Mm,
you know, rather it's more like about keeping the peace, and then maybe then they make a decision and then share that." But I don't know. I guess I think they're probably talking it out over time, but trying to avoid it until maybe it has to be faced, type of thing. But to be honest, I don't love that, because I think
yeah, that's what I'm
it's
curious.
yeah, Yeah, it was tough for me for sure because like when you see something you want to speak up and say, "Hey, like this is kind of wrong," or "Hey, like I want to ask more about this." But then I also felt like I was in a position where I didn't want to come off like the American that's like, oh, like the know-it-all American that just wants to come in and like change things, because like people's perceptions of Americans globally is like different, you know? So I didn't want to
Yeah.
come in and be like, hey, I think we can work on this or I think we can work on that. But when there's a place for open ideas and brainstorming, then I would try to find a way to give like feedback in a positive way like that. But
Mm-hmm.
complaining and things like that, or saying like, oh, especially like hierarchy, because Thailand's like a very hierarchical country. And
Mm.
many other countries that have like a hierarchical system, it's kind of like not normal to challenge the order of things or the hierarchy. Like it's more normal to kind of just conform and say like yes. So it's interesting, but of course I think the beautiful thing now with like where we're at in 2025 is like everyone is merging with each other. We're more interconnected as a globe. So we're all picking up different things from people. Like I don't know if you've heard, like in Japan, Japan has like one of the most like uh overwork type of culture where like it's considered good to stay later at your job and work longer than like the hours that were set. So now though, I think that's starting to change a little bit, and there's more like awareness of these things, and maybe people from different cultures coming in that are able to detect like, hey, maybe this is something we can work on, or learning from each other and finding like a common ground. Because even um like for example, if we say African culture working, it's like most of the time people are late. Actually, I think there's like changes in that depending on the different companies and different places. Like some people decide, no, actually we're going to be punctual, like we want to break that narrative. So I think the beautiful thing about it is like we're all constantly adapting, learning and changing, but at the
Yeah.
end of the day there's always roots and culture. So it's a paradox in a sense, and like picking up different parts.
Yeah, that's very good, interesting perspective. You've been able to experience a lot more, which I think is pretty than me, which I think is a lot pretty good because you've how many countries you say you've been able to do business with or at least get some experience of?
I'd say like I think at least 10.
That's
You,
amazing.
you too though. And you've also, I think if we've got time for you to share about your experience in Abu Dhabi, I'd love to hear about what it was like doing business there or engaging with like people within education there, because you did your study abroad program out there.
Yeah, that was actually like my first country that I got to experience doing business, and that was in 2018. And we actually did the Islamic banking and finance. It
Oh,
was, yeah, so the program was studying the managerial issues and studying finance and managerial issues in the UAE, Abu Dhabi. And so we learned a lot about Islamic banking. So we had someone come in from like the banking industry and like give a presentation to us about that. That was like that felt similar to something I would see from like a bank company or bank industry in America. But what I
mm,
will say the difference is they just seem a little more about their business. I'm not saying that's not the case over here. It just seemed like I don't know. It just seemed like more direct and like suave, you know. And they
yeah.
was also open to not just being about money. You know how a lot of times you deal with like banking companies or any companies in finance in America, and it don't seem as sincere and genuine. I didn't get that vibe from any of the companies or people that we got to speak with or experience in Dubai because we went to PwC. I think we
Mm,
went to. I didn't even know PwC and like the Big Four. That's when I first learned those Big Fours exist outside of America. So that's why you got to travel because you learn so much. So everything just seemed genuine. Like it was the conversation, the bulk of it was finance and money, but everything
mm,
seemed genuine. So that was my
yeah.
biggest takeaway from that. And But I get that because Dubai, it's not a perfect country, but you've been there. But it's you get genuineness a lot of out of a lot of the people in that country. But that was my experience though.
Yeah. No, that's a very interesting comparison you made because yeah, like in the UAE and then like other countries, like in other parts of the world, like I would say I've also noticed that people are more genuine, and I think like sometimes when you do business with Americans, it can feel a little more superficial.
Yeah,
And actually, the rest of the globe is quite aware of that too. I think they take their guard a little more with like American people. So it's nice when someone is like genuine and also like you feel like if they're opposed to something like they'll say it and they're more open about how they feel and what their goal is rather than making it seem like all about closing the deal but rather about like hey this is actually what we're in it for too, this is what we have in our minds rather than just making it all about like a pretty painted picture. So I actually really appreciate that too. That's a good difference that you noted there with like Abu Dhabi and different cities out there.
before we end off, I ask this last question. What's one country or culture in the world you want to experience doing business in before it's all said and done? I say for me, I don't know. I'm in the Asian. I actually am interested outside of Thailand, like the Balis, the Tokyos. For me, it'll be that Asian. It'll be that
Is
whole
there a particular country you want to try it?
Tokyo.
No,
Well,
all right.
uh,
Get ready for some long hours.
yeah, Japan. It'll be
Yeah,
that
no,
way.
true. I actually met a lady. She went and worked for Japan. She was there for like 18 years or something. And I was like, "Is it true? Is it true? What they say that they're like it's." She was like, "Yes, it's very true." She was like, "They like applaud you if you like take a nap at work because it means you worked so hard that you're tired, like staying late at night, and that it was like very very long hours and like a lot of burnout." And I'm like, "Wow, that's really interesting." But it's also like it's so. I mean, if you think about it, like so much came out of Japan too. Like
Yeah.
Japan's like a powerhouse, you know. So it is quite interesting. I think for me, where I would want to go do business, I'd really want to see what it's like to do business in the Caribbean. Because I want to see what it's like to do business maybe in a more relaxed environment, maybe like an island or like somewhere in the Caribbean or something like that. Yeah, like I think it would be a cute vibe to see what that's like. Like for example, like I'd want to see what it's like to like open up like a small shop on the beach, like what goes into that, the people you meet, the environment. I think it'd be quite interesting compared to like the different other environments that are maybe more like direct and um like less communicative, maybe more. I want to go somewhere that's like very open and see. I'd love to go even to like Latin America somewhere and do business there and see what it's like, share some good food with people.
Well, you kind of got that exposure. What you say, like a taste of it. So, what did you get from that little taste, even though it wasn't in person?
Honestly, I loved it. I really loved it. I love the team in Brazil that I worked with.
Uh-huh.
They're amazing, very personal. Like I would be excited to like hop on the call and talk with them and catch up and then get to business too. Cause there's like a good balance between that. Like, you know, we're not gonna waste too much time sitting here talking. And then when we get to business, like it's really about business. But also I feel like they're also like my more like a colleague friend than just like a person doing business with them. And I've actually like built business friendships with like people in Argentina and Colombia, and it always
Mm.
just feels more personable for me. I think also being an Algerian myself, we have a very hospitable culture and we enjoy people, really. We enjoy getting to know people. We enjoy making people feel like at home and safe and good and like just it's a communicative culture. So I think I vibe quite well with like Latin American culture in the business setting. And it's actually like I, when I was working with like different companies to like help with their Latin America business, I
Yeah.
noticed a lot of people don't really know how to do this actually if you don't if you're not open to the other culture and learning about how they operate, it can be really awkward because you get in and you just want to go straight to business, but they want to talk to you. And then if you feel like, why are they talking to me? And then you kind of just avoid doing business in that area because you don't understand how it works, or you hear that things take longer. So you're like, okay, I don't want to do it anymore. So I think it's quite a cool thing to do to like expand your horizons and like talk to people of different cultures just in your day-to-day life, because that's really what got me to like now as an adult like working in international business, because ever since I was young I just really was intrigued by different people. I wanted to learn about their lifestyle, like where they come from. So all this really helps, just being open, like Jerome said earlier, like opening yourself up to being exposed to a new culture.
Yeah, same man. I always had the same affinity since I was a kid, the interest of wanting to connect with people from different walks of life, both personally and professionally. And I always envision myself doing business with people from different backgrounds and cultures. So it's safe to say we
Yeah.
both, I guess, living out our one of our purposes in our life, which is amazing. So this has been a great episode. I really enjoyed it. Hope you all have enjoyed it as well. What are some last takeaways you want to give to the audience before we get out of here?
I think, be yourself, because other cultures too will appreciate like learning about you and where you come from and your genuine self. So come into it as yourself. It's definitely nerve-wracking to go work in a different culture, work people from a different culture, but I think the more open to it you are and you come into it with a curious mindset. And also I would advise, and I learned this from a very awesome sales mentor of mine. Like she's phenomenal. She's like one of the most successful women in ad tech sales too. And like I learned that, sometimes you should pick up on people's habits too in the call and
Mm,
kind of mirror in a way to make them feel comfortable. So if you notice someone, you get on a call and they're just like, you're like, hey, how's it going? And they're like, good. Then you're like, okay, let's go to business. But if they're like, oh yeah, like I'm doing good, it's so good to meet you, like how's it going? Then you spend a little bit more time to understand them a little more. But if they seem more closed off, you get straight to business. So really pick up the vibe too. Pick up the vibe and adapt.
that's good. That's a real good one. It's kind of like being observant. You know what I'm saying? And the small things actually says a lot about a person. So that's a good
Yeah.
one. And I say for me, that's actually a good one. Be observant with doing business internationally. You have to be observant because people actions always speak louder than their words. And when you're doing business internationally, you have to pay attention to people actions.
Yeah.
So I would say that's the biggest one. Be confident and be observant. That's it.
Yeah. Definitely.
All right, guys. Well, we hope you enjoyed another great episode of the Globally Connected podcast. Please be sure to comment, like, and subscribe at our YouTube channel. Follow us on LinkedIn and stay tuned. We got more great content coming your way. All right.
Yes. Thank you all for your time and have a great rest of your day. Peace.